Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me today is Owen Papworth, co-founder of Oregonix Farms. Thank you very much for joining me today, Owen.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Owen, people familiar with the podcast know that I like to start with a little bit of background. So how was it that you found yourself in the cannabis industry?
Oh man, that's kind of a fun story. My brother was one of the earlier medical cultivators in Oregon. He was actually a legacy cultivator before the medical programs were even issued, and was one of the first medical growers. And so he's quite a bit older than me, and I got the opportunity to help him and assist in his cannabis cultivation like from a pretty young age. And so that's kind of how I got introduced to it. And I don't know, kind of the rest is history, but a lot of big small plant counts and big outdoor, like large individual plants in sun grown down in Southern Oregon.
How young is I started a little young?
Well, I actually fell in love with cannabis at about 11 years old. And
Okay.
kind of a unique opportunity. And I would say that I started helping him on cultivations when I was like in my teenage years, like 13. Yeah, and so that's kind of where it started.
What was it like watching your brother transition from the legacy market to the medical market?
I would say that it was, a lot of fear around regulation, and it was pretty intense. Like I would say, actually, I remember at the end of when I was an outdoor cultivator with him, we kind of had a little bit of a falling out for a couple of years there, on the tail end of some pretty stressful times. And I would just say that the transition told me that I made a decision I was only going to grow indoors, and if I was ever going to again. And it's pretty crazy where you've got overlapping laws. Like basically you've got state laws that say one thing, federal laws that say something else. And, if you're serious about staying, felony free, it can be a pretty intense time.
Why did you decide to only cultivate indoors?
I think just because, when you got helicopters flying around your crops, and law enforcement like doing, can see your plants and comes and does checks and, kind of harasses you about it. That was kind of the contributing factor for me. You're out in the sun, you can go on Google Earth and see our plants.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, that does sound incredibly stressful. How do you decide then, like, no, you know what? That's what I want to do.
Well, I haven't ever really been very risk averse. And I've always looked up to my brother in a pretty major way. He's an intense guy. He's a pretty accomplished competitive athlete and wrestler and football player. And he kind of laid the foundation for me, kind of not so much of a stoner, more of like a militant, kind of a disciplined person that really like instilled in me that every detail matters and we are in control. Like and what I get out of it is going to be what I put into it. And that just kind of laid the groundwork for me getting involved in the recreational market later.
So getting involved in recreational, how did you come to Oregonix?
So I met a good friend of mine, Matt Schwimmer, whose father is my business partner, David Schwimmer, who is the CEO and other co-founder of Oregonix Farms. The two of them had a dispensary or a couple of dispensaries in Oregon, and they now have sold those. And I think that that relationship, led to this opportunity in Illinois.
Okay. How are things going in Illinois?
Well, I mean, it's great. I mean, I would say that the market has a lot of maturing to do, but also has a number of challenges. I mean, I would say that regulatory wise, the biggest contrast between Oregon and Illinois has to do with the regulations. I mean, I routinely have a state police officer at our facility doing a tour, or a state regulator from the Department of Agriculture on site, like weekly or every other week. depending on what's going on, they'll just show up very different than our facility. I have another company in Oregon, and I've had a series of them here. And so in terms of Oregon in recreational, I'll see a regulator if there was a complaint, or maybe once a year, if that. So it's a very different situation. The regulation is about 100 times more in Illinois, which is a much higher bar to entry, and higher cost and a challenge to operate.
Is that, do you equate that to growing pains in Illinois just because it's a younger market, or do you think they're going to be more militant kind of for the foreseeable future?
I think they're going to be more militant for the foreseeable future. I mean, I think that regulated markets over time are the healthiest for the people that are, for the businesses that are involved in them, typically. As long as they don't allow too many people to get involved in the Illinois market, the people that are in business there will at least be able to make a living. And I think that's the challenge that we faced in Oregon, is that they didn't restrict any of those. I mean, now they've restricted, after they issued thousands of licenses, then they came back and put moratoriums in on licenses. So it's going to take much longer for us to recover from oversaturation here in Oregon. Sorry, I'm actually at my house in Oregon right
Okay.
now. Um, but yeah, Illinois, I think, has a smaller number of businesses, but they're more sophisticated players, meaning that they're capitalized in a more heavy way. And because they're more capitalized, they're able to draw on more talent. So you end up having more challenging competition. A lot more of them are vertical. Significant number of people have 5 to 10 dispensary chain stores, instead of it just being like one or 2. Mhm.
What's the company that you own in Oregon?
It's called Sitka Northwest. We make a brand called Disco Dabs. So it's a variety of extracts, vape carts, infused pre-rolls, and other products. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Um, was there anything in particular that you've had success with in Oregon that you wanted to bring to the Illinois market, or did you kind of want to start fresh?
I mean, it's definitely not a start fresh. So it is very much the latter. I mean, I would say that my philosophy is to copy the best, and then emulate the best, and then innovate from there. And so I'm continuing to innovate all the time, but I'm also copying things that I've had success with. Like the most critical example of that with Oregonix actually has to do with the design of our facility and our cultivation leadership. So those two things are things that have been practiced by myself and my team for over a couple decades in terms of combined knowledge. So I brought in the absolute best cultivator that I have ever met. His name is Andrew Wise, very talented guy, very plant health focused, and is an innovator in this space. And so I would say that through the through my experience and his together, we've designed the facility to maximize efficiency per foot of production, and also for quality. Uh, and so there's a ton of information that we have copied from other facilities and improved on. If you get to make the decisions again, you try to make them better. You know.
Absolutely. I mean, that seems to be what works for those who can be successful in the market. What is your philosophy when it comes to facility design and the equipment that you bring in house?
Hmm. Uh, Philosophy around facility design. I mean, so like one of the things that we built into the facility for cleanliness is that we compartmentalized everything. And so what that means is there's multiple entry points and exit points to every cultivation room, and they attach 2 hallways that are isolated from each other, that you can compartmentalize staff. So like, say you had an issue that you wanted to keep contained within one room, and you wanted to, you had one room, you had identified a pest or a mold or something. We haven't really had to do this much because we're so militant, but the design is inherently built into the facility, where you have these compartments that allow us to, have what we call a clean side and a dirty side to the cultivation. It's all really clean, but that's like one of the things that we bring to the table uh, design wise.
Is there any equipment that you couldn't live without in Illinois?
Um, hmm. Well, I mean, I would say as a craft grower, since we have limited canopy feet and we're competing against people that have multi-100,000 foot canopies, that efficiency per foot is paramount. And also that also is mainly related to yield and quality per foot, because we have to have extremely high quality product in order to be competitive, since we have less and we have to produce a lot per foot. So I would say that our mechanical system would be, lighting and mechanical, but probably just mechanical because the environment that the plant lives in, um, if you think about it on like uh, on a gradient, like between on one hand you have outdoor cultivation, and on the other hand you have like precision climate control where it's like 1%, 1 degree of variation. You can control anytime you want. You want to change the temperature, humidity up or down. You're able to do that. I would say that obviously outdoor is extremely inexpensive. And then on the other side, you have extremely expensive infrastructure. So we're as close to the precision side as we could possibly get with our budget and during COVID with supply chain issues.
Okay. What type of cultivation do you do? Do you use aeroponics? What do you guys, what's your method?
We use technically it's hydroponic, but we use a soilless media, which is cocoa fiber.
Hmm.
So it's a hydroponic, mineral based fertilizer that is, injected using a automated system.
Okay. So you recently launched Northern Heights. How has the launch gone, and what has been the response?
Well, it's been overwhelmingly positive. I would say it's man, both from our customers, people in the community, on social media, even on the Illinois Trees Reddit page, which is pretty popular. Seeing people post comments about that it's the best cannabis in Illinois. I've seen that posted over and over and over again, and it's just I'm incredibly grateful that to have those kinds of reviews. I would just say that we're really excited to release the strains that we have coming, because what we originally started with was clone only genetics that we brought in from a trusted supplier. And actually on the 27th of this month, we're going to make our first harvest of our own pheno hunted proprietary genetics. The first one's animal styles. And so those are exclusive to Oregonix completely. Those genetics are not grown anywhere else. Those phenos. And that's kind of where uh, the unique fingerprint of Oregonix is going to really hit the Illinois market. I mean, it's cool to have people like the stuff that we grew from other people's cuts, but I'm very excited for the feedback of the genetics that we grew.
Was the decision to use other people's cuts just the reality of starting up the business versus the time that it takes to pheno hunt?
Yeah, I mean, it was a substantial amount of money. Originally I was going to hunt the seeds, and then kind of at the last minute, Andrew and I were looking at it, and again, it's like integrity is a really big deal to everybody at Organics. I mean, that starts with David Schwimmer at the top, and it kind of goes down from there. Like, if we're doing it, we want to do it right. We want to do the very best. And with that in mind, I would say that we weren't going to release genetics that we weren't happy with. But when Andrew found a reputable supplier, a good friend of his that he was able to get clones from, because I was like, hey, if we could figure this out, we basically save about $1 million, or an 800 or some crazy amount of money, instead of waiting like 6 months of production or 8 months of production in order to pheno hunt our own genetics. And then you kind of come to market with a bunch of chaotic genetics, because it's like, if I do pheno hunts, I've got all these different plants, instead of having, like, when we have super boof hit the market, like that came from a clone. They're all the same. It's all consistent. I didn't really want to put something on the market that we weren't really proud of, I guess, and had any variability at all. And so that's kind of the primary decision making behind that.
Well, that makes sense. It's so much easier to come out and gain consumer trust and maintain it rather than lose it and then try to get it back.
Yeah. And that's something I have a lot of, you're talking about things we brought from Oregon. I would say that that's a big thing, having watched brands, get really big and then go away really fast. I know that it's not so much about how much market share you can grab, it's what you can keep. And it really comes down to serving the end customer. I think that's one of the things that people miss most often is that what do we do this for? It's for the end consumer who, is selecting a product from a menu and is excited about it and goes home and, opens it and goes through their whole experience with that. I mean, we're changing people's lives, in that moment. And I think it's that's something that we take pride with, and that's like why we do what we do.
Is this need to do it right why you chose to do craft cultivation?
Uh, So I have this unique relationship with practice. Having been an entrepreneur for a number of years, worked in product development. I've had a number of different companies where I designed and manufactured products for the hydro industry. I've had a number of different farms and different things. I would just say that practice it became my focus instead of the actual results. And that may sound a little weird, but what I'm getting at is that having failed so many times to achieve my direct goal, I've noticed that if I focus on just getting better consistently, like, okay, it's not gonna be perfect, but did we make some progress today? Are we headed a little closer to our goal? And making re-identifying my perspective on what victory is, and making it about small victories and daily ones. Conveniently, though, I will say that if you do that a lot, you start to win some big victories.
Well, I hear that from entrepreneurs a lot. It's the that ability to keep pushing forward. That is when they eventually achieve a level of success. Whereas, I mean, I think that some people have this idea of what it is to be an entrepreneur, and they don't realize how many, you know, how many L's you got to take in the process.
Oh yeah. I mean, for
Um,
me, yeah, go ahead.
no, no, go ahead for you.
Oh, I was just gonna say that like it really all came together when I got introduced to jujitsu about 7 years ago. And I went and dedicated myself on the mat to and you basically just go lose a bunch. And it kind of like brought all my entrepreneurial losses like into focus. And I was like, oh, okay, it's okay. I get better when I lose. It's okay as long as you can survive those losses and focus on the next step. And those adjustments that you get better with. That yeah, I mean you make a lot of progress.
Do you, as a craft cultivator, do you face any unique challenges that some of the larger companies don't face in Illinois?
Yeah, yes. I would say that if I was running a facility that like we have 5,000 feet of canopy. And so if I was running a facility that say had 100,000 or 200,000 feet, it'd be very easy for me to assess a number of tiers of products where I could put multiple brands out. And for us, we have limited capacity. So like we kind of have been niched into the spot where we need to compete at the high premium level. And what that means is that, if you have I think there's like 4 or 5 other craft cultivators active right now, and there's more coming. But let's just say that there's like 20, 30, 40 of us competing for that top tier shelf space. The big challenge I think is you're going to see a number of for the craft grows as a whole, you're going to see a big challenge to compete for that market space because you have big guys that are competing for that space that are able to compete better on price point, and then you have all the other craft grows that are trying to compete for it as well. And there's just no guarantee that everybody's going to be a winner. Like that's just not how that's going to go. It's part of why we do everything that we do to try to, have a level of precision in what we're doing so that we can make sure that we're in that top like 90 or 95th percentile of cultivators.
Is Illinois still in a green rush? Sort of that rush that we see out of the gate when a state comes online?
Yes, I believe so. I mean, the analytics that I've seen say that Illinois has the most expensive cannabis products in the country right now. And having watched, legalization roll out in medical, state by state, and also recreational, starting in Colorado, moving around from there, Oregon, California. I would say that there is a paradigm that is unfolding. And in the beginning, the cultivators have the dominant position, and then it kind of transitions to the retailers as supply increases. The retailers kind of get to command their price and control the market. And then as saturation continues, it's really the processors and the product manufacturers that kind of clean up at the end. And my perspective is we're somewhere between the retail and processing phase in that in Illinois. But I mean, the rest of the country is all through that whole cycle. I mean, almost all the way. I mean, I don't want to speak. Some of these places like Florida are still developing really big time. And I'm not super familiar with many of the other states. Uh, but the general shift is we're definitely in a green rush in Illinois.
Okay. How do you maintain a positive relationship with the retail side of the business, just so you stay at the front of their mind?
Well, one of the things that's pretty unique about us is that we have another arm of the business that we're working on developing, which is another business that's owned by David, which is Emerald Dispensary. And so we have a plan to roll out a chain of dispensaries. And what's interesting in Illinois is that there's so many vertical businesses, companies that own cultivation, manufacturing, and retail stores that there's a lot of how do I explain it? So it's basically like I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine kind of a deal. Where like, if we stock our shelves with their product, they'll stock their shelves with ours. So there's a lot of that going on. So I would say that is if you're basically that the market in Illinois, has a lot of vertical players, and I think that we're trying to be one as well because it's going to, give us the best position long term.
Okay. You said there were only a handful. I saw that there were, at the time I checked, there were only 10 of the 87 craft growers who were licensed were operational. Why is that the case?
Okay, so that's a recent number, my numbers are a little old. I would say that it's extraordinarily expensive to start a craft grow and complicated. I would say that those are kind of the two things. But mainly it's money. Very difficult to raise capital for a cannabis business. Period. And in the volume that is needed for this. One of the issues is that it's not easy to make a budget that's really accurate based on the information at the beginning of like for us to start in the beginning, we'd have to know the complete cost of a build out without going through plan review with the county and not having a complete checklist of requirements from the state. Like there's statute, and then there's what they have posted, but there isn't like the unknowns make it very difficult to make a budget. So you basically have to just like pick a number and then multiply it by 4, and then you're probably somewhere close. So that's kind of the answer.
Okay. How did you guys do it? I mean, how are you so quick? Like, I want to say quick out of the gate, but also seeing some pretty quick success.
I mean, it's a top-down deal. From the start, our CEO and co-founder David Schwimmer is hell-bent on getting this thing operational at the high level as quickly as he can. And so everything that I've done in his direction has been like as quick as I can at the highest level that we can execute it. Um, and I would say that his background in finance and insurance played a big role in that because we were able to raise or generate the majority of that capital to be able to do it. And I mean that's just a challenge that with the unknowns, I mean, it's really hard when you get a bill for a few million more dollars than you thought it was going to be. I mean that's the kind of if you want to be a cultivator in Illinois, like and do it fast, I think that that's the kind of situation that you need to be ready for. Is like, are you going to be ready to pull out your checkbook and write a few million extra dollars for the budget? Because that's the kind of deal it is.
When you move fast, sometimes there are missteps, sometimes there are unforeseen challenges. Any come to mind in terms of, let's say, a teachable moment for people that might be looking to do it after you guys?
I mean, the biggest thing I can tell you is just budget.
Yeah.
It's like, and this is the hardest part because you'll make a budget and then you add 50% to it. Like they say in business school, they're like, oh, double or 100%, double it up. I would say that I would factor that by 3 or 4 if you want, or at least have lines of credit or the ability to draw on that money and have a plan for it, even if every logical thing is telling you that you're not going to need that money. That would be my biggest takeaway, actually, is that, because you make a plan, you're like, okay, what if I add this much more for contingency? And and it's even higher than you think that it should be. And everybody on the team says, oh, yeah, that's way more than it should be. Yeah, you should probably double it again.
So what was the biggest surprise for you in Illinois so far?
Ooh, biggest surprise. I mean, it's probably between the county and the state, with unknown things like, the interpretation of statute and also the wielding of new codes in the county that we picked, uh, where they had never used it on anybody. Like things like I have to test my runoff water for THC in my cultivation, which is about the weirdest thing I've ever heard in my life, considering oil is not soluble in water. Um, but it just has to do with the disconnect. We're kind of the first in that area, or one of the first, and everybody's just trying to make sure that they don't, both at the state level and the county level. Everybody's got it. They're trying to cover their ass. They're trying to make sure that they don't hurt the environment or other people, and so everybody's really scared and careful about cannabis since it's new.
I understand that fear, but are they also like excited and trying? Is it more of a partnership? Because I mean, just seeing some of the figures in terms of the revenue generated by the Illinois market, I have to imagine that the regulators want the market to succeed as well.
They do, and actually, I mean, I would just be the first one to compliment the people at the IDFPR and the Department of Ag, like, for being helpful. These are people that we're on a first name basis with, that I can shoot a text message or an email to, that are like really quick to get back and help us. And they're through very challenging situations. It'll be like, okay, so do you need, like, oh, hey, you're gonna start in a few weeks, and you need access control on every door that you didn't have it on. And here's the kicker, is that, like, in that specific example, it was all approved previously by their department. But it doesn't matter, because if you have a problem, you have to be able to operate within their regulations. So they've been very workable and helpful. They've helped me expedite changes to the facility that we needed. Adding our rosin production on is a big deal, and they're really helpful with that. So it's a challenging job on both sides. I would say it's not so easy to be a regulator. Everybody's upset with you all the time too. Like, that's a fun thing. You get to tell people, like, that they need to spend tons of money or disrupt their whole business. And yeah, people aren't very happy with them. I think the reason why they're nice to us, though, is that we're always nice to them.
No, it's I mean, it it's it's like a tale as old as time, right? Like if you just conduct yourself in a professional manner, it's going to come back to you.
We hope so. And yeah, it has so far. I mean, yeah, we've definitely developed a strong working relationship with the Department of Ag.
Yeah, and I apologize for that tale as old as time thing. I saw Disney on Ice this weekend, and it just apparently really affected me. Oh my god, it came out of nowhere. Um, so I read that you guys like to bring a Midwest touch to your cultivation. What is, in your opinion, what is that Midwest touch?
Um, okay. So I'm gonna try to say this without being inappropriate, but so basically, like, I'm from Oregon, and so my and and a ton of disciplined and high level people have come out of Oregon, both in the cultivation space, and other industries. Okay, I would say that the entry level and the labor force that we have access to in Oregon, when I contrast it to the Midwest, I would say that the Midwest has a much more sophisticated and disciplined workforce. So I've actually been able to assemble what I say is the strongest team that I've ever led. And I think that is a testament to the differences that are between where people are from. And I think it makes a big difference. Culturally, Chicago and Illinois are very different than Oregon. I feel like we're able to find, I mean, there's a number of people on our cultivation team who have degrees in cannabis cultivation, which is just a total, I was totally blindsided by that. It's amazing to have people that went to university who chose to go to school in Illinois and got degrees where they actually cut clones or did tissue culturing, and then grew and harvested hemp plants where they, went through all of the steps and processes that we use in our cultivation. I mean, roughly, in school. And so that's very cool. I would say that the people are the primary difference. When I talk about Midwest touch, it's like, okay, it's really about execution. And yeah, I'm very proud of our team.
No, the Midwest, I definitely know takes a lot of pride in that Midwest work ethic. So, I mean, it's interesting that you say so many of your cultivators had that education uh, as a foundation for other employees that maybe didn't come from that sort of pedigree. Do you look for experience in any particular type of industry, or when you get a resume for somebody that's looking to break into cannabis, are there some things that stand out in terms of like, okay, you did this previously, it might translate to somebody that's a better worker on our floor?
Yeah, I mean, I actually try to make my cannabis professionals, not hire them, if that makes sense, if at all possible. I found there's a potential for issues with people who have substance abuse, frankly, that are kind of melded into the cannabis industry. And so I find that like the things that I'm hiring for first are typically things about who they are as a person. So it's like, do they have a healthy relationship with their ego? Do they have goals that align with the business? Are they, able to look at themselves? I mean, that's kind of the ego thing. Because from there, if you take somebody who's, stable enough and disciplined enough, that has any background, they waited tables, or they're a construction worker, or an insurance salesman, or whatever, right? We can teach them about cannabis. But you can't really teach people how to be stronger humans easily if they don't have enough of the prerequisites. So I really am just looking for the prerequisites. And then I love it when people have, uh, you know, skills that apply to the operation. Like a really good example is like somebody who's an officer in the military, right? Like who then now for a number of years, and then now is like our director of operations. It's like as we work through these battles of adjusting and growing our business, it's very clear where leadership in the past like is now translating into the future, and the ability to do hard things and to persevere and adjust. Those are things that we really value.
So are you saying that like workers that were previously in the legacy market in Illinois might be more susceptible to like substance abuse problems, or people that just are interested in the market in general?
So like it's not that they would be disqualified because they were a legacy cultivator, okay? It doesn't. I mean, obviously that's what I was, okay? So it's not so I'm definitely not prejudiced against people who have been in this for a long time. It's just that it's on its own. It's not like, oh, I get a stack of 20 resumes and four or five of them are, have legacy experience. So all of a sudden those are at the top of the pile. Like that's just simply not how it works. It's more about who they are as a person, what their values are, ability to do hard things, discipline, and then are they ego is in check and they're able to, learn and integrate new information and be part of a team. Uh, and then if they happen to have those skills, then it's just a bonus because then they kind of know the territory. It's like, okay, we're not growing in a tent in your garage, but we're still using nutrients. We care about the climate. We care about bugs. We care about cleanliness, stuff like that.
Okay. What is your approach when it comes to bringing new equipment in house or starting a new process? How do you vet those manufacturers or suppliers? And, because it's a big capital expense.
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, so I teach it, all right, I treat it kind of like a thread that you pull and you just don't stop pulling. And so that means it's about bringing in every possible knowledge resource that we can prior to making a decision. So if we're talking about a new process and sometimes it's something that hasn't been done at all, and I have to do research like in other industries, especially when you're talking about process manufacturing. That's kind of more of like my Oregon business thing, but we do have an extracts, facility that's being built next year in Illinois. So that will be, rolling out. But I would say that there's a hefty R&D process and fact check process before we make decisions.
Okay. I guess one of the common horror stories we hear with people, especially in new markets, is the story of the like dusty equipment in the corner that doesn't work. Has that ever happened to you?
I've seen it a lot. Um, as far as, and I've replaced a lot of equipment at other facilities. We don't currently have anything that's like that.
Okay.
Um, but I've seen a lot of extraction equipment, like as they developed, CO2 extractors, like those things are basically paperweights, and there's like, probably a few $1 billion of them sitting in storage.
Yeah.
And that's a good example because as the knowledge changes about how to do things better, people are replacing their equipment.
So you mentioned that you have a couple of strains that you might be rolling out. What can people expect, going forward in Illinois? What are your plans for both the foreseeable future and maybe a little bit further out?
So near term here, we have some new strains that are launching. We have animal styles, go-gurts, unicorn sherbet. There's a couple others that are all going to drop in April. We just launched our 6 packs of joints, and I have some blunts that are coming. So some 1 gram blunts that I'm pretty excited about. We also are getting ready to launch live rosin. I would say that that will be on in May, most likely. Pretty excited about that. For guys that are into premium products, there's not it doesn't really get much better on the extract side than live rosin. So for flower guys at the high end, we have our eighths of premium flower, and then for people who like to dab, there's nothing better than live rosin. And I'm just thrilled to see the quality we're able to put out from the facility.
Do you have a personal favorite in your product portfolio?
I mean, for me, I would say the strawberry dairy. It has the most, to me, it has one of the more unique profiles. That's what's available now. What's coming though, the thing that I'm most excited about that's like in the facility right now is the unicorn sherbet. And that's a plant that Andrew pheno hunted in a previous facility and was able to bring it in. Uh, and it's just amazing.
Can you provide any insight into the naming conventions for new strains? Like,
Sure. So there naming conventions, there is a rhyme to there's a to the chaos, there's a rhyme to the reason. Basically what they do is they take categories of names. So it's almost like cookies, okay? Like if you have like Girl Scout cookies and you start crossing it with something else, they might not take Girl Scout cookies or cookies and move it over. They might take another word that they associate it with, like it could be cake or champagne, and they have these names. And you can look online. There's a whole bunch of information about how they name uh, products, but you basically have to come up with a breeder comes up with a name that is associated with the original parent name, and then they use that to create the new name.
okay. Okay, that actually makes way more sense than I expected.
Yeah, it seems like it's all just made up, especially as a processor. Like I see literally thousands of names come in, and we have to mix them and formulate batches based on, what the extractors are trying to make. And so the names can get pretty crazy.
What are your most popular products thus far in Illinois?
I would say that the products that are the would be the Super Boof and the Bomb Sauce. They're both very high potency. Uh, and the Super Boof is just crazy. I mean, I think our first batches tested 37% total cannabinoids. So it's not, hard to see that we would get the kind of reviews that we've been getting.
I mean, is that on you? Do you have somebody else that helps you with that, like sort of watching reviews and comments online, or do you like to do that personally to kind of keep a pulse?
I mean, I think that the cultivation team kind of has that as a sense of pride, because as a cultivator, you're paid for your hours or for your time, and the production is what it is. And it's not really until this, having worked in cultivation a lot, the sales are really where you're getting your gratification. And so when you hear people who are out using, if you make a product every day, if you're a maker and you have reviews about your product, I mean, it's about the closest thing you're going to get to a human connection related to your trade and your craft. And so I think that there's a ton of ownership. I can't even tell you how many text message threads we have, a text message thread in the business, and how many times these reviews get posted. I mean, there's got to be, 50, 60 screenshots that I've seen of like, I found this one or I found that one. It's like, here, look what they said. Like, and those are also good opportunities to adjust too, because you'll hear a customer, talking about like the price points, for example. That's kind of the one thing that we've, received critical feedback, and we've actually responded by adjusting our pricing, to meet the end consumers, demand.
How would you describe the current state of the cannabis industry in Illinois?
Hmm. Um, I would say that it's growing and changing. That there's a lot of change that's happening. And I think that the people, you have new craft growers that are coming online. You have more dispensaries that are coming online. So that's a pretty significant thing that I think is probably overlooked is I believe there's 175 dispensaries that are online now, roughly. Okay. And I believe that there's another 100 and a quarter, or God, I wish David was here. He would know. But there's a significant number of dispensaries that are coming online. And so when that number goes from 175 to say closer to 300, you're going to see a substantial increase in the total unit volume and sales that are happening in Illinois. I mean, safe, easy access to customers is a huge deal. And so I'm really excited to see, and that kind of everything else is kind of following that. So you have craft grows coming online. You have cultivation centers that are, working to expand their businesses, to grow more feed, to add brands. You have other white labeling companies, coming in and doing deals, bringing their brands to Illinois. So I'd say that it's on a pretty steep incline right now in growth.
Okay. Do you have any other states on your radar that you're interested in potentially dipping into?
I don't know if I should say this. Well, for me, I mean, personally, Texas is like kind of the last frontier. And so in the event that Texas changes its laws, that's a drop everything I'm doing kind of a situation. I think it's like the second or third biggest economy in the world. And, when that happens, it's going to be a serious green rush.
Well, Owen, I really do appreciate you taking the time today. Before we get out of here, is there anything else that you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience either knows about yourself or Oregonix?
No, I mean, I would just say, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn if you guys have anything that you're interested in or have questions about. I mean, my name's Owen Papworth, and that's my name on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out, shoot me a message. If there's anything that we can collaborate on, or if you have questions about our products. I mean, I'm always looking to make our business better, and the way we do that is, by connecting with other people. So yeah, I would just say thank you so much for having me on, and yeah, we'll see you here again soon.
One thing I'm curious about before we get out of here. So you started in cannabis at a very young age, and you've seen nothing but success. Well, seemingly ongoing success. Do you have, as an entrepreneur, do you have interests outside of cannabis, or do you think, you're kind of here to stay?
I kind of go where the challenge is the thing that I have interest in real estate and product development and other, and applying these skills to other businesses. Sure. And I'm continually pushed back into cannabis, because it's the thing that I know the most about. And I think that actually what's probably going to happen is that I'm probably going to be even more involved in cannabis, especially in the processing and product manufacturing side, because there's a tremendous amount of innovation that's coming that people don't really see around standardization of products. Like right now, everybody's making unique products, but the technology does exist to repetitively make the same premium products with like exact same formulations, in a very similar way to you see like how the cigarette industry like makes like every pack the exact same way. Well, with cannabis, like we can replicate that. And I think that there's a tremendous amount. I'm pretty sure I can live the rest of my life and continue to do what I'm doing and still have new challenges.
Well, thank you very much again, Owen. And, I hope we get a chance to do it again soon.
All right, cool. Well, just let us know. Hey, thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. Before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. All right. For Owen Papworth, co-founder of Oregonix Farm, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. We'll see you next week.